So here's where we left it. We have a roll button, we have a score button. We can roll 3 times and then it disables the roll button. But now we want to add the ability to hold certain dice and to roll other dice, like you would when you're playing Yahtzee. So we need to go into our game logic, which is, I think we have that in the frame. Yeah, so here, what we'd like to do is add an array that says whether a single die in the dice set is being held or not. And so we're going to put that down here. We have this button array, but we're also going to have an array of hold. I call it the hold array, and it indicates which dice you want to hold and which ones you want to roll. So this would be another instance variable, and we'd add it at the bottom, private. Okay, so down at the bottom, we're in the J frame where we have all our buttons and stuff from previous classes. So private, and a hold button only has 2 states. It can either be pressed down or it can be not pressed down. And so anytime you have a 2-state variable, one that only has 2 states, it's best to use a Boolean data type, because the Boolean data type is either true or false. So we would say Boolean. Kind of a funny word. It's named after this guy, mathematician named George Boole. I'm not sure where he lived. I think in England somewhere. Back in the 1800s. That's why they call it Boolean. It's an array, so we have to do this. And we're going to call this the hold array. And all this is going to be is just a set of dice, or a set of Booleans that will indicate whether the die in the dice set is being held or not. Now, because we add an instance variable to the bottom of the class, we're also going to have to initialize this array up in the constructor. So we look at the frame constructor. Here's the frame constructor. We create our number of dice, but now we also need to create our roll array. So I would do that here on the next line. We'll say hold array equals new, and then Boolean and we say the number of dice, because that's the same as the dice set. Okay. So that's where we create this array, and we want a hold variable for each of the dice in our dice set. So we use numDice. Yeah, the first part, we're just declaring that we're going to have this hold array. We don't know how big it is going to be yet, because we haven't started the program, but we're just telling the Java compiler, okay, this is private. It should only be used inside this this class. It's Boolean. It's a Boolean array. Don't know how big it is, but I'll use the brackets to tell the compiler this is going to be an array, and we're going to call it a hold array. But we don't know how big it is going to be yet. Once we figure out how many dice they have in their set, then we know how big the hold array needs to be. So numDice is a constant, I think. Yeah, I think we have it as a constant. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, here's all the constants here. So if later on we want to play Yahtzee with 6 dice instead of 5, or a variation of Yahtzee, it's relatively easy. All you have to do is go in here and change this number once. It changes it everywhere. That's what's nice about constants. Okay, so we have our hold array. Next thing to do is to make the roll button sensitive to that hold array, and not, what we want to do is not roll the ones that are held. Okay? So now we have to go to our JButton roll action performed. And this is where we roll the dice right here. And we're rolling it for every die in our dice, or in our set of dice. But before we roll it, we want to make sure that the user doesn't want to hold it. So it's in here in the loop where we say we don't want to roll it every time. We just want to roll it if it's not being held. So this is like in Yahtzee when you roll a couple dice and you want to keep those 2 and roll the other 3 because you're trying to get a 3 of a kind or something. So we want to do the same thing here. So we would say this. If, syntax here is really weird. If not, hold array sub I. If not hold array sub I. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but the compiler seems to like that, doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah. You want to make sure the exclamation point is inside the parentheses, not outside. So what that parenthesis or what that exclamation point means is the word not. It's actually the logical not operator. It's a unary operator. Unary means it only has one operand. Be careful not to say urinary. Somebody did that at a conference once. That was bad. It's unary, okay? It only has one operand. Binary has 2. Ternary has 3. Now you could say this, a novice programmer would say this. We would say if hold array is not equal to true, so that means the same thing, right? If that hold array thing is not true, then we do actually want to roll that dice, okay? But again, professional programmers like to be as terse and obscure as possible. So what they say is, well, the Boolean, the hold arrays are already true or false. We don't have to say, is it equal to true or equals to false, because it already is true or false. We just want to say when it's not true. So the way you say that is you just put a not in front of it. You go to the hold array. If it says true, well, not true is false, right? So if this is true and you not it, that makes it false. It won't do it. But if the hold array is set to true, not true is false, and it will skip this, looking for an else. Okay? So you have to think about this for a while. Why does that make any sense? This is a good point where you might put a comment and say, in English, if the user is not holding this die. Okay, in English that says what I'm trying to do. This doesn't really tell me that unless you're a programmer that's seen these kind of things before. Actually, we have a problem here. We're still rolling the dice. See how we roll all the dice here? And then here all we're doing is getting the value. We're not actually rolling the dice. So we're going to have to roll these dice individually. Here we have to get rid of this. Because now we can roll each die individually, so we got to take that out. What my dice roll does, it rolls all the dice, and in this case we don't want to do that. But we have to roll the die individually because now it's conditional on whether the hold array is set or not. So we would say, my dice sub I dot and then we pass in the die number. Oh, I see.
Is there any difference if the method is inside
The print, yeah. Yeah, it does. This has to be on the inside. If you have it on the outside, it doesn't understand it.
Like, do they have to be all together?
Mm-hmm.
Those two?
Yeah, if you do that, it may not understand it. So I smush them together, but it may not be required. If it's complaining, then I would take the space out. Okay, so if the user is not holding this die, whatever the die number is, then we're going to roll that die and reset the value on the button. Okay. So now we're rolling the dice individually. Now, just for fun, we're going to hard code one of the holds to be set. So I'm going to say hold array. We're going to say the third die in our set. We're going to assume that's being held. So we're going to say true. Okay, so this is just temporary code. Anytime you put in temporary code, I usually just say temp right in front of it so I don't forget to take that out. But this is just to test the array. Okay, I'm going to run the program and see if the third die doesn't get rolled when I hit the roll button. So I hit the roll the first time. Notice how the third die didn't get a number. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. I have to reset. So it looks like our hold array is working, right? Because it's not rolling the third die because we hard-coded that to true. Okay, so here's a hard question for Java 2. So what's the event that happens that'll force us to actually change the value of the hold array? What will the user need to do to hold that die? Click the button, right? So now we finally have something for the button to do. When we click the button, we want it to hold it, and when we don't click the button, we don't want to hold it, right? Or we unclick the button. Yeah. We want to make it a toggle button. I think there's a J toggle button, but I'm not sure. And we'll click the button. It'd be nice if we'd turn it a different color or do something to make it look like it's being held. It'll also depress, and we want it to stay down if we click it. So it's a toggle button. You press it once, it's down. Press it again, it pops back up. I can't remember how to do that. So this temporary code isn't going to work for us, okay? But what should happen when the button is pressed? Well, first of all, do we have an action perform button or an event handler for when they press the button? The answer is no. So what I'm going to do is double click on this first button. Yeah. I'm going to double click this first button and it will create an event handler for me. Okay? It's down here. J button 1 action perform. That's the one we want. Okay? Because that's our first die. And all we're going to do, hold array sub 1, because we are actually 0. That's our first element in our hold array, equals not. Yeah. What does that mean? J button 1 action perform. Just double click on the button and it will create this for you. Okay? So we're in the UI. Yeah, when you're looking at the user interface, the design window, double click on that first button and it will create this action perform thing, the event handler. No, the first die button. If the first button was held already, it will make it unheld because it'll set it to false. So all you're doing is just flipping the conditional. If it's true, then it'll become false. And if it's false, it'll become true. We now should be able to turn on and off the hold characteristics of the first button. Okay, so we'll give it a try before the class ends. Okay, so I'm going to roll. I'm going to hold that first 4. And notice how the 4 isn't changing anymore. 4 isn't changing. Okay? Now probably when we hit score we want to clear our hold array, but we'll talk about that next time. Okay? So here I am rolling away and the 4 is never changing. Okay? That first button. So the code for it is kind of obscure, but it's really kind of cool. You take whatever's in the hold array and just invert it. So that'll take some thinking too to understand what's going on there. Okay? All right, thanks.